not the way that I wanted to start this post-game show by getting into the Mets falling short, yet here we are. How you doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest New York Metropolitan post-game show presented by my awesome friends at BetUS TV and SeatGeek, but we'll get into them a little bit more later in the show here as the Mets falter in Game 2 of a 3-game set against the Minnesota Twins by a final score of 6-3. In today's show, we're going to break down everything that you need to know, innings 1 through 9, all the key takeaways, as the polar bear and Juan Soto certainly have the home run heroics, but between bad fundamental baseball by, yes, Francisco Lindor, and fitting that Lindor, who had a costly error in this game, was also the final out of the ball game, I will give him a greater benefit of the doubt. It's not easy to hit 102, regardless on where it's located, but we're going to get into all the pros, the cons, the frustration, the positives, and everything in between from this latest game for the Mets in Game 17 of a 162, as again, they dropped this one by a final score of 6-3. To everyone first chiming in live on a replay, happy to have you guys in here. It's an absolute nothing short of a shame that I cannot run the official WardyNYM post-game jingle after what I thought would be a nice big win. Sadly, we don't get the win, and even though that there were plenty takeaways from this game that I'm happy to get into, there were positives that were certainly outmatched by the negatives. Tyler McGill was towing the rubber against Bailey Ober, and who would have thought that between Tyler McGill and his .63 ERA and Bailey Ober with over 70 ERA, that Bailey Ober would be the better starter between the two today, yet that in fact was the reality. But if there is one positive to get into, folks, first and foremost, that is the fact that today is Jackie Robinson Day, and is a very special day across Major League Baseball, as every team in the league rightfully so pays homage to the man that completely changed the game forever, and Jackie himself. I always love seeing everyone rock 42. It's a very special day across baseball. Would have been even better for our Mets if they could have secured the victory in the end, but at minimum, it's always great to see everyone repping that number 42. It means a lot to me as a baseball fan. I'm sure it means plenty to each and every one of you. But guys, let's do a quick roll call in the chat right now to see who we have in the live show, and then to all my replay viewers, I want to hear from you in the comments down below. What is your biggest takeaway, and what is your frustration level from the Mets' latest loss here, again by a final score this time of 6-3 against, yes, the Minnesota Twins? How you doing, Rebecca? Great member in the chat. Hope you are well. I know you're going through quite a bit right now, but I appreciate you taking the time. JR, how you doing? Quarantine, how you doing? Peter, how you doing? Jeremy, Mothman, how you doing, everybody? Andres, Alberto, Tito, Soto, great member. Chad O'Neill, great member. Wacky, how you doing? Billy Dottie with the $5 haul already, as Billy states the following: Lindor McGill lost us the game, flush us down, and win this series tomorrow. Soto is heating up, which is a great sign, and Acuna is here to say, you said it best, baby. And we're going to break down all the key takeaways, including the positives and the negatives, in which you mentioned plenty there. Daniel Caps, great member. Stoney, great member. Caesar, how you doing? JTB, Mike, going up the list here even more for each and every one of you. We got Jeremy, how you doing? We got Andres, we got Madeline, how you doing? We got Zach Flakerton, longtime follower. Mike Norden, longtime follower. Vincent, how are you? JR, great member. Eugene, how you doing? Sadude, how you doing? Beatty's awful, how you doing? Everybody and your mother, come one, come all. Let me see your initial reactions, because listen, we can't go all hot-headed. We can't get too ranty here when it's April 15th for one, but secondly, the Mets are still 5 games above 500, right? And this is such a stark contrast from a year ago when we were breaking down games 2.5 weeks in the season, and the Mets were already looking beyond mediocre. Not the case here. Even with the Mets' continued struggles with runners in scoring position that we'll get into, there were positives to take away from this ball game, and I'm not going to sit here and act like an absolute nervous Nelly after this one loss to the Twins. Now, if the Mets lose tomorrow, which very well can happen, I hope it does. It doesn't happen, but there is a clear concern for tomorrow's game, mainly the fact that Griffin Canning is not going to be pitching. Canning was a last-minute scratch that Carlos Mendoza discussed pregame today because he's dealing with an illness. Jesse Winker just got back from an illness in which he was sidelined for basically 5 days. Now Griffin Canning has an illness of some sort, unfortunately, so the Mets will defer to someone in AAA. That'll be one of Justin Hageman or Jose Urena, more than likely to get the call, but that call will not officially happen until tomorrow, because if the Mets made that transaction technically today, then that would mean that Griffin Canning would not only have to not play, but he wouldn't be able to play for 15 days. He would have to be there in the minors or so. And that is not what the Mets want to do with Canning. So by pushing the transactions to be officially announced tomorrow, that'll allow Canning to be pushed an extra day of rest, which means he will get the start in the St. Louis Cardinals series, either for game 1 or game 2. Everyone gets pushed back a slot, essentially. And in the case of what the Mets will do here is that they will have a spot starter, like we just said, and one of Hageman or Urena coming from the minor leagues just to eat some innings. And then I wouldn't be shocked if someone like Jose Butto then came in for long relief after the fact for, say, 2 to 3 innings. But guys, let's get into this. Let's break down what was working and what wasn't working for the Mets in this matchup. And is Danny Young gone tomorrow? No, he isn't. Especially when Danny Young was far from the big concern for the Mets in this matchup. Danny Young went 1.1 shutty today. So again, not a guy that I expect to be going anywhere anytime soon at this very moment. Malone in the chat is saying trade Lindor, either like the troll that he is or the schmuck that he is. It's one of the two, or just being a nice sarcastic you-know-what, which is perfectly fine as well. We're going with the latter, aren't we, Malone? I know you're a beauty, baby. Happy to have you in here. Sproat is not available for the Mets right away. I know you guys have Brandon Sproat questions, and I'm going to reaffirm them in a video that's dropping tomorrow in the AM for you guys. Please check it out because it will be relevant regardless on what the Mets do or don't do in their series finale for their day game, 1:40 p.m. tomorrow. I'll have a video dropping anywhere from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern with a lot on miscellaneous topics for the Mets, and one of them has to do with, again, the Mets starting rotation situation heading in the Cardinals series. And Brandon Sproat isn't going to happen because Sproat just pitched this past day or so for the Mets. He's only on like 3 days rest right now. Justin Hageman is actually slotted to pitch for AAA Syracuse tomorrow, so he's the perfect fit based on rotation alignment and making sure that he has proper rest. So yeah, Brandon Sproat isn't happening. Blade Tidwell isn't happening as he pitched in Syracuse today, nor are the Mets going to go down any other pitching route that isn't named Justin Hageman or Jose Urena, barring crazy changes from now up until tomorrow. That would surprise me, to say the least. But guys, let's see what you guys got for me in the chat. We're going to talk a bit on Lindor in your second. Alberto Soto, thank you so much for the 2 gifted. He gifts Zelda as well as Poison Frog in the chat for becoming new members. And in case you guys don't know the memberships here, the memberships give you exclusive perks like shoutouts from yours truly every single night that we do shows. You also will be getting exclusive Mets-related emojis utilized in the chat and the comments down below for replay viewers, and we will be doing at least one, if not multiple, monthly live shows for just our members, in which it's a full-on Q&A. I answer whatever comments, questions you guys got for me for over an hour plus time, and we have a lot of fun doing it. But guys, before we break down everything that you need to know in this one, I want to give a big shout out, as always, here to my amazing friends at BetUS TV that has you covered all the latest picks, odds, and lines. Because as you guys see here, we have right now Juan Soto and Pete Alonso at plus 1,000 and plus 2,000 apiece to win the National League MVP this year. Soto obviously is much higher likelihood than Alonso, but Pete has been far and away the best player for the Mets so far this season. So if you guys want to sprinkle any fun dollars on a bias bet, then by all means, check out our awesome friends at BetUS TV that again have you covered with all the latest odds, lines, picks, props, you name it. Anthony, how you doing in the chat? He says, if it was September, Lindor would have just hit a 3-run game tying homer. Oh, 1,000%. It definitely goes in hand with the fact that we're still in April at the end of the day, and sadly, Lindor isn't going to be there every time. But I will say this: is Lindor the sole reason why the Mets lost this game today? No, of course not. But Lindor heavily factor into the Mets losing this game? Yes, it's hard to not say otherwise when his defense clearly costed the Mets a run. Harrison Bader, that I told you guys pregame would be the biggest thorn in the Mets side today, lo and behold, that is exactly what happened. Pair that then with the Mets and not getting sharpness from Tyler McGill, because McGill was far from dominant today. Even though they had some of the velo working, he was having a lot of pitches over the heart of the plate, gave up a lot of contact today, and between that and bad fundies, it's a recipe for disaster for this Mets team. Lindor is selling. Shreks, what are we talking about? What are we talking about in the chat when it comes to selling? Let me know. But let's break down the volume, everybody. We're going to speed run this any by any 1 through 9, and we're going to get into these key player individual performances, headlined by both Juan Soto and the Polar Bear. And honestly, let's just start the conversation by getting into the Polar Bear, because even when everything continues to go wrong in Mets land in a game where, again, you're hoping to get some consistency, you're hoping to get a routine going, and even with some bombs, it just wasn't enough. The Polar Bear, however, continues to be the difference maker. Pete Alonso gets the party started in this one with a 2-out, no doubter corner of a home run as the Mets have themselves an early 1-0 lead. Alonso would rip yet another home run, and later on in the ball game would rip an opposite field double. Alonso's final line on the day offensively is 2 for 4 with a home run, a double, which gives him now 12 extra base hits on the season, 20 RBIs already like the beast that he is, a 356 average, and a just under 1,200 OPS. And guys, it is officially official, exactly like what I said. Justin Hageman will in fact be the starter for the series finale tomorrow. It's TBD if he'll start or if the Mets will use an opener, but that's the forthcoming roster move. Exactly what I expected, everybody. So official news from Anthony Como there to reiterate to each and every one of you. The Mets are bringing up Justin Hageman, which I will just tell you guys, get ready. I have no clue what we're going to get from Hageman tomorrow, but Buddy has not been all that great so far this year in AAA. All I can tell you is that the Mets signed him this past offseason, and they purposely have stretched him out as a starter for the first time this past spring for the hope that, again, if they have to rely on him to come in to eat some innings, that it won't be the end of the world. So Hageman, who hasn't fared overly well so far in the minor leagues this year, his last outing wasn't terrible, but again, it's fluctuated so far. We'll see how he fares tomorrow, hoping to give the Mets at least 3 to 4 solid innings. At minimum, it's going to be around 2, and then I'd expect, again, a guy like Jose Butto to come in after the fact and eat some innings for this Mets team, because Butto really hasn't pitched a terrible amount for the Mets so far this year because they haven't needed him to. Tomorrow is the prime example of a Jose Butto multi-inning day, barring changes. But the polar bear in Pete Alonso, he continues to reign supreme and now leads yet again all batters in the National League in OPS with just under 1,200, guys. He is looking so unbelievably good at the plate right now, and I've been telling you guys this since the start, and I'll reiterate it just a little bit more. Thank you guys again for smashing like and subscribe on as your first chime in, folks. It really does mean a lot. Help us get to 100 likes here by the end of the live show would really mean a lot, because I know we're not going to get a lot tonight, obviously, and a loss like this. Vincent, thank you so much for becoming a new member on the platform, baby. We're happy to have you in here. Happy to have you join the community. As always, all things Mets talk, happy to have you in here as well. I thought Mendoza should have replaced Terens on first in the ninth with a speedier runner. May have not made a difference, but unfortunately, there really wasn't any speedier options off the bench because the Mets already utilized both Marte and Winker, so they didn't have anyone to defer to off the bench for speed, all things Mets talk. In that situation, that would have been Jose Siri, but Jose Siri is now going to miss the next 2 months or so with injury, and Luis Angel Acuna got the start, and Brett Beatty isn't, crazy fast. You can make the argument that, yes, maybe Beatty would have made sense there to come in, but at the same time, if then Beatty comes in and the Mets rally back in this ball game, you don't have Terens for the rest of it, so I see the level of concerns are either. The Mets lost this game, simply put, because, again, they didn't hit enough outside their couple home runs. Their defense was not sharp whatsoever, and Tyler McGill was just not the guy that we really need him to be today. It was a collective effort, and the Mets losing this one by a final score of 6-3. But the polar bear and Pete Alonso reign supreme, everybody, and I want to hear from you guys, even with all the struggles that we have. I shouldn't even say struggles, but even with the Mets faltering in this ball game, we shouldn't discredit the continued dominance that is the polar bear himself and Pete Alonso. Because like I said, he got the party started in this one, everybody. And as we continue to break down from there, the Mets had a 1-0 lead heading to the bottom of the first. And Tyler McGill then gives up a flyout that we see to Julian, which is fine. Strikes out Buxton with the fastball, looking good. Wallner then with a 1-out check swing infield single. And then he exits the game with injury. He really looked like he tweaked his hammy, sadly bolting down the first baseline. And then Ty France strikes out to end the inning. In the second, Bailey Ober, the 6'9" towering right-hander, making Tyler McGill even look small. He has himself a 1-2-3 inning. Jeffers in the bottom of that same inning rips a 2-out single off of McGill, but that's all she wrote, which then leads us to the third. And in the third, we would see Bailey Ober with another 1-2-3 inning. The same Bailey Ober who was solid last year, no denying that whatsoever. He was a very solid pitcher last year for the Twins, and just under 180 innings, he had a sub-4 ERA, a 3.2 expected ERA, a K-to-walk ratio of like 7.5 to 8, so pretty solid. Bailey Ober definitely looked more like the Bailey Ober you'd expect versus what his early season numbers have shown to this point with that 7.11 ERA entering the start. No less, Ober goes 1-2-3 in the third, and Harrison Bader, of course, who I said would be a pest today, was exactly that. Bader with an infield single. Acuna made a really strong play that we saw, but Bader just legged it out there to be safe there at first. Thank you so much, Ralph, for the $5 donation. I appreciate that. Ralph says, Bats need to wake up. I feel like they missed about 100 100 meatballs today. I wholeheartedly agree, especially Winker. He just got under one that led to the sack fly later in the ball game as a pinch hitter. They should have beat the loss out of the boys. Let's get them tomorrow, 1,000%. And listen, I don't think pitching is necessarily going to be on our side tomorrow, so the bats need to wake the hell up and have themselves a collective effort for their 5th consecutive series victory. Otherwise, the Mets will lose 2 straight for the first time this season, and we'll just have to wait and see what entails tomorrow for the boys in blue and orange. But as we continue on from here, everybody, after we would see Bader get on with an infield single after what was a strong attempt by Acuna to get him out, he then steals second base, and that is only the 4th stolen bag against the Mets this year. Leave it to Harrison Bader, who fluctuated with his speed last year to look like a speed demon early in this one. Byron Buxton, speaking of speed, he's right up that list too when healthy, and he ripped himself a single, his first of multiple hits on the day. So runners on, less than 2 outs here for Ty France, who would then tie the game, unfortunately, because of a routine ground ball by Francisco Lindor is completely botched. That should have been an easy out every day of the week. Lindor can't handle it, and that ties the ball game as Harrison Bader would be driven in there from third. Carlos Correa, who would exit this ball game later on, fittingly due to injury, and I say fittingly not as a slight against him, but just a reality. The Twins' big bugaboo will always be their 3-headed monster, and Correa, Buxton, and Royce not being able to stay healthy. What do we come to find out halfway through the ball game? Carlos Correa exits the game with injury just after we saw Wallner, who again got a hit and looked good yesterday. I'm pretty sure he's the one who had the triple, if I'm not mistaken, and he was pulled from today's game too. So not ideal as a Twins fan, even with the victory by final score 6-3. Correa would make it 2-1 as that was a hanger ripped there by Correa to left to make it a 2-1 lead as we then head in the 4th. And in the 4th inning, we would see Juan Soto rip a ding-dong, everybody. And this is where we now have to talk about Juan Soto and what stood out for him in his latest outing. Another day where the one and only rips one to right. And at that time, that did tie the ball game 2-2 for the Mets in this one with that 1 home run. Now at a 250 average and an 859 OPS on the season. The one and only, I understand there has been a level of frustration, even though I don't understand how you can be too frustrated with a guy who's still entering this series with an 829 OPS. Not like he isn't hitting, but more so just because he's gotten a lot of pitches to not hit and work around. And as he famously said to the media over this past day, that was completely blown up by a lot of schmucks, and they know exactly who they are. I'm here to tell you that Soto is starting to actually get in a groove. He's really starting to heat up now with home runs in back-to-back games, and we're going to need one to be the one and only to help lead the way along with Alonso, along with Lindor, in order for this Mets team to have success. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of fans overreact like they typically do throughout the course of 162, but especially if Soto does not really start to get on a groove, fans are going to come after him because that's just the nature of New York sports, especially for the largest contract in North American sports history. But Juan Soto, a no doubter of a home run that he ripped to right, that tied the ball game, and initially 2-2 at the time, and that had me absolutely hyped up because this was huge. This was right after it felt like everyone got the momentum on the Twins side. Between bad fundies and solid hitting there by Minnesota, a half inning later, Juan Soto, as soon as he starts the inning, says, all right, let's pump the brakes and let's have ourselves a new ball game. Guys, I want to know from each and every one of you in the comments down below, in the chat to all of our live viewers right now, how are you feeling about Juan Soto on a scale 1 to 10? How happy have you been with his performance so far this season, and specifically what we have gotten throughout the first couple games? What has been a cold, frigid series there in Minneapolis hasn't stopped Hoodie Soto from hitting back-to-back bombs in as many days. Juan Soto tied the ball game, folks, but sadly that wouldn't last terribly long because a half inning later, Larnach would get on with a hit by pitch. Jeffers with a double, absolutely barreled well. They initially thought it was a home run, but after review, they gave him the double. Then we saw Castro with a K, and then we see Bader with an RBI infield single, and Marky V, Swaggy V, Mr. Vientos has time, but for whatever reason, I think his hand got slightly stuck in the glove, couldn't make the throw there to home. Then he hesitates for a second, throws to first, even though Harrison Bader is 1,000% going to outrun that because he's full sprint ahead. Bader's safe. He drives in a run, and that would give the Twins their lead, and they would essentially never look back from there. It's 3-2 Minnesota, and then we would see Julian with a double play ball would end the inning. In the 5th, Tyrone Taylor with a 2-out hit by pitch. Acuna then grounds out to end the inning, unfortunately. But one thing to make note of Luis Angel Acuna, specifically with what we saw there. Mark, thank you so much for the kind words, too. I appreciate that. I will expand more on the Soto nonsense, but I will have more of my true organic thoughts on that for you guys in the AM tomorrow. I want to separate it from this post-game show because I know that's going to get lost quite a bit because usually people don't care about the Mets losing ball games when we're 5 games above 500 in the middle of April. There's a stark contrast on the level of interest, especially when you got a day game the next day, and I completely understand that. And that's why we won't be too long-winded in this one. But Mark, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate that. But going back to my Acuna point, Luis Angel Acuna, everybody, hit that ball 110 miles per hour. The hardest hit ball he's had so far in his career that we've seen at the major leagues, and Acuna continues to look better and better. I know he had a play that unfortunately led to a run scoring later on in this ball game, but it doesn't change the fact that it was still a great heads-up play by Acuna that sadly the finish, the execution just wasn't there the way that you were hoping. But Luis Angel, he continues to impress me. It was a 110 scorching of a ground out that ended it for there, but not for a lack of effort. Half inning later in the bottom of the 5th, Buxton on with his second hit of the day. Then he promptly steals second base. Kiersey, if that's how you pronounce his name, junior, who came in earlier for Walter, grounds out. Then Ty France with a fielder's choice because Acuna makes a throw to home, but unfortunately it isn't on Terenz's glove side. It's on the opposite side. So Terenz has to completely reach around, and because he has to completely reach around to the other side, that allows enough time for the speedster there at third to come in and score, that being in Buxton, and that gives them their continued lead at that point, as that would be 4-2 Minnesota Twins. Lee then would replace that we would see Carlos Correa, who exited today's game with a wrist injury due to wrist soreness, they labeled it, and he would line out from there. Acuna would then make a fantastic diving stop to then get the toss to first to end the inning. In the 6th, Francisco Lindor rips his one and only hit of the day. It's an opposite field single, and that hits off of Castro's glove in the infield. So there's one on, no away, but sadly no one does anything, which then leads us to the bottom of the 6th, where the Mets bullpen finally starts to get exposed. The Mets bullpen finally looks human. Max Kredick, my dog, who's pitched 10 scoreless innings to this point, gives up a leadoff double to Jeffers, Castro with a ground out, Bader with a K, and then with 2 outs, Julian sadly rips an RBI single to increase the lead. At that point, I believe it was 5-2 Minnesota, or right around there. At the 7th, Brandon Nimmo then grounds out Vientos with an opposite field single, his second opposite field hit in as many days. Terenz then with a double because he's amazing, his 5th double already of the season. And Luis Terenz, that is how good he has been with the extra base hits. Winker then pinch hits, and he comes in there for Tyrone Taylor, and he unfortunately flies out to right. It drives in a run on a sac fly, but Winker unfortunately just got under that one, as Keith was, you could clearly tell Keith was upset on the broadcast. From one great hitter to talking about current players in today's game, Keith knows damn well about getting under a baseball, and he saw that right away. He's like, oh no, so close, because you could tell that if he barreled that middle heater, it would have been out of here. Regardless, that makes it a 2-run ball game, 5-3, still in favor of the Twins. Acuna then with a 2-out walk, a quality at bat for him, and then Lindor unfortunately grounds out to end the inning. We then see Lee with a 2-out home run against Max Kredick, and that would be it for Max Kredick's final line. He gives up a pair of runs in just over an inning of work there. Danny Young comes in for a 6-3 ball game, and he strikes out Larnach for the final out in the inning. As we then get to the 8th inning, in the 8th, Soto with a strikeout. And mind you, Juan Soto started this at bat 3-0, and then he was squeezed on strike 1 that we saw. And really bothered by the fact that he was squeezed on that strike 1, because I know that Soto has a better eye of the plate than pretty much anyone else, or close to, even better than the umpires, and that was just below out of the zone, but too close to take a guess for the schmuck of an umpire. He makes it 3-1. It works back, and then Soto is caught looking to unfortunately strike out there. Alonso, right away, first pitch swinging, rips an opposite field double directly after down the first baseline for his 12th extra base hit of the season. A half inning later, because the Mets don't score him with runners in scoring position, surprise absolutely nobody, sadly, Jeffers gets on with a hit by pitch, Castro with a ground out, Bader with an infield single off of Lindor's glove, and that would be his 3rd hit of the game, and Lindor then turns a big double play to end the inning. As we then get to the 9th and the final outs here for the Mets, it is as follows. Duran comes in, the flamethrower we know, and he allows Vientos to get on base thanks to an error there by the Twins infield. Terenz then gets on with a fielder's choice. Winker then gets on with a fielder's choice because everyone keeps going down. Some bad fundies there by the Twins. Then Acuna rips a first pitch single off of Duran and then gets all the way to second base on defensive indifference. So Luis Angel Acuna continues to impress, continues to play his part, and Francisco Lindor then strikes out after a grind of an at-bat on 102 miles per hour against Duran. That, again, very hard thing to do. I'm not going to give Lindor hell for how the game ended, but I will at least acknowledge that he was a heavy factor into why the Mets lost this ball game today. Would things have been different if Lindor didn't have that error and Miguel would have to work again the way that he did from there? They would be different. Would they be better or not so great? I'm not exactly sure. But what I can tell you is that the Mets simply just did not have things working in their favor today. Defensively, they looked a bit sloppy. Offensively, they were sporadic in their production. And mind you, the Mets were 0 for 4 in this matchup with runners in scoring position and left a total of 7 on base. The Twins left 7 on base too, but they still went 5 for 14 there and had a boatload of hits against this Mets team. They out-hit the Mets in this matchup that we saw 13-7, and they had a 355 expected batting average to the Mets 239 expected batting average. James Phillips, thank you so much for the donation. Frankie has been atrocious defensively. I think atrocious is a bit harsh on him for a guy that I understand has 4 errors versus he had 4 errors a month later last year around mid-May versus him having it mid-April. I wouldn't say that he's been absolutely atrocious defensively, but to your point, James, he definitely hasn't been the guy that we need him to be consistently. Lindor has now cost us 2 games this season when it comes to his errors. One was more drastic than the other, though, because when he had multiple errors, I believe that game against Miami, that's when the Mets dropped that game 2, and then that led to that rubber match of game 3. Thankfully, they won it there, the series finale, but they weren't going to win until the Polar Bear hit that game-tying dead center home run, 3-run ding-dong there that we saw in the 8th inning, and then they went on to win in extras. And then my ass bolted to hit the movies I was like 20 minutes late for because, of course, the one day I was planning to go to the movies with a buddy of mine, the Mets have themselves an extra innings game because why wouldn't they? What a treat to see someone like Soto wearing a Mets uniform. Thank you, Cohen. I 100% agree, Rebecca. I 100% agree. And we're going to be very delighted with a lot of the production that we get from someone like Juan Soto throughout the course of the 162. But guys and gals, I would love to hear from you guys how you're feeling, your key takeaways from this 6-3 victory. Again, there isn't too many exciting things to break down to get into in this one. And we do have a quick turnaround with the Mets having their day game tomorrow. So like I said, we will have a key video dropping in the AM, which has everything to do with more on the Juan Soto topic, as well as not only on the farm like we usually get into, but also the latest on guys like Alvy and others, because there's a lot of things that have transpired on that front that I know that you guys want to be filled in on, but also want to share your thoughts about in the comments down below. Let's see. Defense let McGill down his last start too. Defense always lets Tyler McGill down, but here's my take. Tyler McGill has bad defense almost every single time he's out there, and I'm convinced that he plays a part. And the reason why I'm convinced he plays a part is in the following sense. Tyler allows plenty of balls to get into play. We saw that today. Today was a great example of exactly that. Even though he didn't walk anybody, he still gave up 8 hits on 95 pitches throughout 5 innings. You know, that is not going to get the job done for this Mets team consistently. Has there been games, like even his last start, where if it wasn't for Beatty's piss-poor error against Miami, he would have maybe had himself cruising a bit and gave us hopefully at least 6 innings. Yes, I think that's also true. But Tyler, given the fact that he throws a kitchen sink at you, 1, but 2, that he also induces a lot of flyouts, it has been a recipe for disaster at times for the Mets, depending on their outfield configuration. And the infield, again, it's unfortunately Francisco Lindor just not making a routine play the way that he's supposed to. Because McGill today had his four-seam fastball at 41%, and he topped out 97 and sat 96. The velo was a tick up today that we saw. It was nice to see him topping out there on 97 plus. The sinker that he threw 33% of the time was topping out 96 and sitting right around 95. The slider 15% of the time, topping out 87, sitting right around 85. The changeup just 9% of the arsenal, topped out 89-90, right around 89-90 is what we saw on the average. The curveball just 2% we saw topped out at what we saw 82 miles per hour and sitting right around 81. Max Kranick, who had the 3 pitches today, slider he threw 65% of the time, folks, and he had a 75% rate whiff rate there that we saw against the right-handers versus a 58% rate against left-handers. Topped out 94, but sat actually right around 90 on the slider, but topping out 94 was nasty. Four-seam that he threw 90% of the time, topped out 97, sat 95, and the curveball they threw 16% of the time, topped out 81, and sat right around 79. Danny Young in this matchup had the sinker, the sweeper, and the cutter, 56% of the Arsenal was a sinker, topping out 93, sitting 92. Sweeper, 36% of the Arsenal, topping out 85, sitting right around 82, 83. And the cutter, just 8% of the Arsenal, topping out 90, sitting right around 90. And that did it for the Mets pitching staff, in which, yes, they entered today's game with the best ERA in Major League Baseball. I'd imagine that changes a little bit after giving up these runs, but Tyler McGill only gave up 2 earned runs because there were 4 total. 2 were costed against him. The other were not due to the errors. Max Kranick gave up a total of 2 earned runs, so his ERA is up to a whopping 1.54 throughout now what is 11.2 innings this season, so still looking very good. And Danny Young is at a flat 3 ERA now on the season for the bullpen. So Mets pitching gave up some runs today. The defense wasn't in their favor, but the good news, folks, and the best news about this is that while at times I don't love this, knowing that there's such a quick turnaround the next day, because the content that we do has such a short shelf life, I really don't mind it at the same time when I too want nothing more than to just sleep off what was, in my opinion, just not the most ideal game for this Mets team, where I know that we can get more out of them, and we know that we expect more, but tomorrow is going to be fascinating to see what happens in the Justin Hageman matchup there, because you're going to have Hageman likely start. Jose Butto, like I said, will likely be the backup, and you go from there. So we'll see what happens for the boys in the series finale, everybody, but I would love to get to any of your comments, questions, and concerns that you have for me before we wrap up this live show tonight. Like I said, I'm not going to be too long-winded with this one. Just want to go over the core of the game, everything you need to know about it, and let that be that. Also, shout out to my awesome sponsor at SeatGeek, everybody. Make sure you utilize our promo code WARDY10, which is linked down below the description, which is hyperlinked. So if you guys already have the SeatGeek app downloaded, or make sure you download it, click that link then, and you're automatically going to get 10% off your next ticket purchase, whether that's for Mets tickets, with games coming up, especially next week there against the Phillies for their homestand, whether that's going to be in St. Louis if anyone's traveling, or in the St. Louis area for the series after the Twin Series. Whatever you guys need on the ticketing front, SeatGeek has you covered, and we're trying to have them here all year long, so your support has been endless. Thank you guys so much for it. Continue to use our promo code WARDY10, link down below, and thank you guys kindly for doing exactly that. I'm glad it's an early game tomorrow. Quick turnaround, not dwelling on this bad game tonight. Yep, and that's another thing too. Like, I will say this, I don't really dwell on regular season games nearly as much as I used to as a fan, just because how I started my content tenure as a man who really had nothing to really do besides make content, whereas now I know I have to make content. I need to make content. I enjoy making content, but it's an everyday thing for work reasons, especially as a full-time dad. My days go so fast now that it's really hard for me to dwell hard on, say, a bad game or two for the Mets. But it becomes quick if they go on a losing streak, because that not only impacts me from a fan point of view, that really impacts me from a creator point of view, because not only are naturally views going to be down, but also it's just not ideal as someone who does this full time, and you have to go through the ebbs and flows of the team. So when the Mets were dog shit, like all the first month and a half last year, that was hell trying to cover. Absolutely hell. Having to repeat myself, having to do these stupid rants over and over again. And I was genuine about them, but I hated the fact that I had to be genuine about them, because the Mets kept giving me endless reasons to rant in the month of April and then May. It was horrendous. So that is why I'm not losing at all any sleep over tonight's game. I know what the Mets need to be better at. You guys know what the Mets need to be better at. And we know that at least Juan Soto and the Polar Bear showed up on a day that was a very important day across Major League Baseball for Mr. Jackie Robinson. Let's see here. Braves lost. I saw that. Yeah, they had some home runs working. Austin Riley's heating up, but it didn't matter. Greens from Atlanta. I just woke up. Who won the game? Ansel. Who won the game? I should be asking you the exact same thing from Atlanta, my friend. You and I know very well how to lose games here on this. What day is tonight? Is today a Tuesday night? On this Tuesday night. Imagine being one of the 1,000 Jet YouTubers. I know. My guy Richie Moore at Jets Media goes through it every single year. I don't know how the hell he does it. You have to be a sick son of a gun to be covering the Jets year long at any point, because they've never had really a stretch since going back to Namath where you're like, oh, I'm proud to be a Jets fan. Yes, you had the exception of Mark Sanchez there and falling short to my Steelers and the championship game that year, and I know I ruffled some feathers. I'm a Steelers fan. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be my quarterback barring changes, and I don't know how the hell to feel about that. Mike Tomlin has me all in cahoots, because while we have a 500 record every year, it doesn't mean shit for a team that has championship expectations, and we haven't sniffed anything close since Aaron Judge broke my heart as a 12-year-old. Not Aaron Judge. Aaron Rodgers broke my heart as a 12-year-old back in 2012. Yeah, so don't appreciate that whatsoever. Let's see. I cannot imagine the trauma of being a Jets YouTuber. I know. My guy Richie, for those that don't know, and this will be the final thing I say before I get out of here, everybody. My guy Richie, who covers the Jets and the Knicks. He has a Jets media, has a YouTube channel, Knicks media. He does have a Mets media, but he hasn't made Mets content in years because he just can't balance it with everything else. Him and I actually started our friendship based on Mets content. We did a podcast together throughout the first year on YouTube, throughout the 2021 Mets season, for the Mets specifically, and that was a lot of fun. But he goes through the gauntlet on covering his favorite teams, especially when your favorite teams really haven't had a lot of success until recent. Mainly in the Knicks, not so much on the Jets. So it'll be very fascinating to see how things work for them with Justin Fields this year, what they do at the draft. And he will be attending the draft, too, as a media credential member. So I'm very proud and happy for him. And that's coming up right around the corner. But guys and gals, that is about going to do it for our show. I can't thank you enough for the endless support here. D-Mac, I did see the stuff on Alvarez, and I am going to expand on that again in a video that's dropping in the AM for each and every one of you, because that'll go directly in hand with our latest farm report. So be on the lookout for that, everybody. Thank you guys again for the support. Apologies that the boys couldn't turn out and get us the dub tonight, but hopefully they can do it tomorrow there for the series finale. Until tomorrow, folks, for our pre-recorded video that'll drop in the AM, our post-game live show directly after Game 3 of the series. I hope you all have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go, Mets, baby.